In 1900, a collection of British trade unionists, socialists and other middle-class intellectuals formed a new political party, the Labour Party, which, according to Clause 4 of the party's constitution, was devoted to achieving socialism through a framework of democracy. In the meantime, Labour would look out for the everyman and people who worked for a living. Now, this party did well enough to overtake the Liberal Party as the second largest party in Britain in just 25 years, but in second place she would sit for a bulk of the 20th century. While the party had successes at various points, the Conservative Party maintained dominance over British politics. The 1980s and early 1990s were a particularly tough time for Labour as the Tories continually battered Labour in elections and public opinion. So why would the working class, who make up the vast majority of the population, vote against the party that had their best interests in mind? Because the Tories were unified with a clear message. But on the left, not only was your vote split between various other parties, but these parties themselves would disagree on what they believed in. Whether it was social democracy or socialism, whether to join the EU or don't, to support Britain's nuclear arsenal or not, it showed the party as weak and indecisive. The public stuck with the Conservatives. Step in Anthony Charles Linton Blair, a moderate Labour MP for Sedgefield. After the Labour leader John Smith suddenly died of a heart attack in 1994, Blair put himself up for election as party leader, on a platform of moderating the party and appealing to more than just blue-collar workers. And he actually won. One of the first things he did was organise a rewriting of the party constitution, removing Clause 4. Now, the Labour Party was no longer devoted to democratic socialism, but instead social democracy, market capitalism with a strong social safety net. In the run-up to the 1997 election, Labour's campaign strategies shifted away from boring crap about seizing the means of production and surplus value, wage slavery, capitalism, blah 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 blah.
Shut the fuck up, no one cares.
Instead, Labour focused on cheap, easy sound bites that anyone could understand.
Education, education and education. More jobs, more nurses, smaller classes, safer streets, success in business.
Tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime.
And it worked. After spending an entire childhood in opposition, the Labour Party finally caught its big break and won a general election. And what a victory it was.
There it is, 10 o'clock, and we say Tony Blair is to be Prime Minister and a landslide is likely. And this is why Labour, 47%.
Tories have been wiped out completely in Wales and Scotland.
11% swing, 15% swing, 16% swing, 11% swing, swing of 14.5, be the biggest ever Commons majority.
Here's
Tony.
The landslide victory ensured that the government could basically do whatever it wanted, and so many domestic reforms promised by the Labour Party for decades could finally be put in place. These included things like a minimum wage, devolution, House of Lords reform, enshrining human rights into law, free heating for the elderly, free entry to museums and galleries, 24 days paid vacation for all workers, civil partnerships and other LGBT rights, maternity leave for oh my, that's a lot of things. Additionally, the miserly spending of the Conservatives was fully reversed and billions were pumped into schools and hospitals. The National Health Service budget was increased by 200% and the education budget was doubled. Now you may think this is all reckless spending. It's impossible to pay for all this. Well, you're dead wrong, and in fact the government collected more in taxes than it actually needed. Outside of the UK, Blair's government led an international coalition against the Yugoslav government, which was oppressing the Albanian minority to the point of near genocide in the Kosovo region. NATO bombings of key Yugoslav targets brought an end to the conflict and the persecution of Albanians. British intervention in the Sierra Leone Civil War also put an end to the conflict, reasserting government control and ending the blood diamond trade in the country. After 4 years, it was time for another election, and surprise surprise, another Labour landslide. After all, everything was on the up. Inflation was low, crime was down by a third, children were achieving their highest results ever in school, unemployment was at its lowest point in history, thousands more students were going to university, 1 million pensioners and 3 million children had been taken out of poverty, and the quality of the air, beaches and drinking water was as clean as before the Industrial Revolution. Everything was going so well until a fateful day in 2001. The peaceful optimism of the 1990s had been ripped out and replaced by a cold, untrusting paranoia. American President George W. Bush said that whoever did this must be brought to justice, and outlined 6 countries whose governments he believed were terrorist supporters and therefore must be overthrown. One of the weakest and easiest to pick off was Iraq. So Bush told Blair to come up with an excuse to invade and destroy the authoritarian Iraqi government. The UK's Secret Intelligence Unit, MI6, had found some kind of believable evidence that maybe the Iraqi government was trying to build weapons of mass destruction. That's good enough for me, yoik! Look at this! Look at this! Blatant nuclear weapon programs on Iraqi soil. We're not so convinced. I mean, this isn't a solid enough justification for attacking Iraq. It says right here you've used a Nicolas Cage movie as a source for some of your secret intelligence information. Right, I totally understand what you're saying. You're not on board with this. I get it. But we're doing it anyway. All over the world, millions of people turned out to protest the decision to invade Iraq. Unlike Kosovo and Sierra Leone, this war did not have support of the international community. Come the 2005 election, Labour's vote share tanked in retaliation. Opposers of the war flocked to the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats, giving the latter their best ever performance since becoming a third party. In England, the Conservatives even had more votes than Labour, but due to the unequal nature of first past the post, ended up with 91 fewer MPs. Despite this, Labour came away with a cheeky majority that was surprisingly large considering their leader just committed a war crime. Okay, that's fine. This is fine. That's still a big enough majority. We can still do many great things and further domestic reforms like bagging London as the host of 2012 Olympics.
On 94.9 FM. BBC London.
With a summary, I'm Max Rushton. Good morning. The Metropolitan Police say there have been explosions in multiple locations in London. It's too early to say what's caused these explosions. There were a series of bangs on London Underground stations. A number of tube stations have been evacuated. The first report was...
On the 7th of July 2005, 4 Islamic terrorists detonated explosives on public transport in London. 52 people were killed and 784 people were injured. Some blamed Labour's soft stance on crime for the attack. Under Labour's plan, all well-behaved criminals were immediately released from prison after only serving half their sentence. Even terrorists. Others blamed immigration. Hundreds of thousands of immigrants were moving to the UK every year, which was exploited by Labour's opponents as the reason for the terrorist attacks. All of the attackers were either immigrants or the children of immigrants. The Home Office announced that over the next few years, identity cards would be introduced as a way to keep track of criminals. But the ID cards didn't just apply to criminals, but to everyone. Everyone would have to carry an ID card at all times, and many civil rights groups opposed the measure. Each day, Labour was looking less like they were building a social democracy that worked for all, and more like they were building an authoritarian police state. Other laws passed in this period allowed the government to suspend any law in an emergency for up to a week, a law that allowed them to detain anyone for up to 28 days, and one that criminalised saying rude things over the internet. Let's not forget the ruthless treatment of lawbreakers as if being a criminal is some sort of disease, or how they made 4,289 things illegal since 1997, such as disturbing a pack of eggs, impersonating a traffic warden, not asking someone to turn off your house alarm if it goes off while you're on holiday, telling someone you closed the door of a ship when you actually didn't, and issuing a civil order banning a single 13-year-old from using the word grass. Who writes these laws? Liberal Democrat Home Affairs spokesperson Chris Huhne called it legislative diarrhea, and Tory MP David Davis resigned in protest and fought a by-election as a political stunt to generate a wider national debate on civil liberties. The casualties in Iraq were mounting, the war was taking longer than expected to win, and the American leadership weren't actually as smart as people first thought.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't.
The pressure on Blair from Labour MPs began to mount. Confidence in his leadership abilities had been lost, and so on the 27th of June 2007, Blair resigned as Prime Minister. He was succeeded by the Chancellor, Gordon Brown, who was not terrible, and polls showed if he had called an election upon becoming Prime Minister, he would have won, but he decided against it. Just a few months later, and the world's financial institutions would face their worst days since the Great Depression.
Almost everything there completely wiped out. Apple shares were just getting hammered this morning.
No, I don't know. Some fucking country in Europe took a shit.
Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate.
At one point, the market fell as if down a well.
Financials took a big beating. Lehman down almost 20%.
The prosperous British economy that Labour prided itself on and relied upon to fund their huge welfare programmes was shattered. Come election time in 2010, Labour were in dire trouble and wasn't helped by Brown dismissing people's concerns by calling them a bigot.
Everything. She just this all bigoted woman that said she used to be Labour.
In fairness though, she was kind of bigoted. But even after all this, 29% of people had enough faith in Labour to vote for them again, and it was enough to keep any party from getting a majority. Brown attempted to get the Liberals on his side and form a coalition government, but after hearing some of their proposals, negotiations were dropped. 6 days later, and the Conservative Liberal Democrat coalition was agreed. The coalition, as it is referred to in the UK, is called by some political historians as New Labour's fourth term. Many of the policies in the coalition, austerity measures, NHS reform, and hosting the London Olympics, were originally started by the outgoing Labour government. However, many of Labour's policies like identity cards and other anti-liberty laws were repealed. As Gordon Brown resigned as Labour leader, the Shadow Environment Minister Ed Miliband was soon elected to take his place. While Miliband tried to distance himself from Blair and Brown, he wasn't exactly a radical of the 1980s either. He called himself a One Nation Labour, whatever that means, but it wasn't enough to get voters back on his side, especially in Scotland where the Scottish nationalists wiped the floor with Labour in 2015. Miliband's successor was socialist Jeremy Corbyn, who spent most of the Blair years voting against his own party's policies because he saw them as a betrayal of Labour's socialist principles. His election as leader was seen as a death blow to New Labour, as the party began to adopt many of the radical left policies supported by Labour in the 1980s. With many centrist MPs being deselected or pushed out of the party, it seemed a moderate Labour Party was now long gone. But since Labour's catastrophic 2019 defeat, polls indicate that most people actually look back fondly on the Blair years, and every political demographic outside of Labour members ranks Tony Blair as the best Labour leader in decades.
After an hour or so, Gordon got up to go to the loo. I waited downstairs. 5 minutes passed. Then 10, then 15. Suddenly the phone went. "Tony, it's Gordon here. I am upstairs in the toilet," he went on, "and I can't get out. In the building works, the loo door had been replaced, but had no handle on the inside yet. The soundproofing in the house meant that I never heard him. I went up to the loo. "Withdraw from the contest or I'm leaving you in there," I said.